Hello YouTube, StuckInAPool here, and today we're going to be talking about some Fire Emblem Heroes stuff once again. And what I want to talk about is the new skill, or should I say new seal, that was introduced as a part of the newest Tempest Trials, the Winner's Envoy Unit Tempest Trial. And of course the three seals that were introduced were Threatened Speed, which is very nice, Iode Shield, which is great for flyers. I don't want to waste that A slot. And I think the biggest one, and probably going to be the most like meta influencing, I'm not going to say meta breaking, is Heavy Blade. So Heavy Blade, of course, being the seal, or the skill that was native to Ike. So what is Heavy Blade? Heavy Blade basically allows your unit to gain 2 times the special cooldown points on their own attacks, only if their attack is greater than their enemy's attack. So basically, instead of getting 1 charge on your attack, you get 2. It doesn't work when you get attacked, it's only when you're attacking. So you'll see that with Steady Breath, Ike's getting 2 charges whether he's attacking or being attacked. Whereas with Heavy Blade, Ike only gains charges when he's the one attacking. So like I said, it's only available from Ike, so it was hard to justify inheriting it from him because he's so hard to get. I mean, he's had a lot of banners, but again, I personally would rather be merging him to try and get a stronger Ike to use, rather than wasting him for just his ace skill, especially when for so many units, ace skills are typically used as stat boosts, especially for attack. So you're kind of hurting your own attack to use Heavy Blade, which makes it less effective. So it's, you know, kind of hard to justify using. So who tends to want this Heavy Blade seal? So of course you have units that just have naturally high attack, or particularly high attack and speed. If they're able to follow up, then that means if they're able to follow up and they have higher attack than their enemy, then that means they're going to get 4 charges just off their own attacks. And if the enemy can counterattack, then that means they're going to get 5 in combat. So that's kind of excessive. And that's definitely, like, if you're running Aether, then you're going to have it ready for the next fight. If you're running, like, Bonfire or Iceberg, you'll be able to trigger it on your second attack. So that's a pretty big deal. And of course there are some high attack enemy phase units that are going to want it, especially if they're running quick or post, and if you want them to have something else on their A slot. So like, obviously if you're using Steady Breath, Heavy Blade's not, you don't really want Heavy Blade, but if you want to use, say, Distant Counter or something, then you know you're not going to be able to use Heavy Blade in the A slot. But if they have high attack and they could you know benefit from the increased cooldown, then it would be a good slot for them. Other units that might want to use the Heavy Blade seal are any units that can receive large bonuses, particularly to their attack, of course, but also to their speed. Being like Emblem team units, so, you know, Horse Emblem, Armor Emblem, especially Flyer Emblem, they tend to want it pretty badly. Also, Blade Tomes, the bonuses to the attack that they receive affect Heavy Blade, so if they have a lot of, like if you're running an Erica on your team, you know, her buffs are going to add to your Blade Tome user's overall attack, which is going to make it so their Heavy Blade's going to proc very easily. And then of course, you know, if you don't have any Brave Ikes to throw around, which, you know, for most people that's not exactly a commonality, your dragons that have high attack, especially if they're running Lightning Breath, if you don't want to put Steady Breath in the A slot and you just want to use like Fury or something, then Heavy Blade can help offset that increased cooldown charge. So I've made a tier list of sorts as for who is going to want the Heavy Blade seal the most, and I've basically divided it into like subsets of certain units. So I don't have every unit listed. I just want to list a couple examples of each kind of, you know, type, and why I'll list some builds and why I think they're good. Just for the sake of having something playing in the background, I'm going to have a recording of me grinding Tempest Trials up here on the side. So in the first tier, the first subset I have is a group of the high offense flyers, and of course one of those being Churchy. Everyone knew right off the bat that she was going to be a great unit to use the heavy blade steel because her attack is so high, and she typically runs that Brave Axe Death Blow set with flyer buffs. She has astronomical attack stats. If you don't have the resources to give her a Brave Axe Plus and Death Blow and all that, you could always just stick with her native attack +3 and build up her hammer. You can see here, if she's plus attack, she's going to hit 60 attack. So she may not be doubling anyone, but her attack is so ludicrously high, you could always just give her a quicker post and make her a somewhat high defense enemy phase kind of unit. Kind of along a similar vein of Baruka, Mikalis. And you could just always put threat and attack on her to help her, for one, take less damage, and also trigger heavy blade more easily. And if you do run a Brave Axe build and you run Death Blow, typically your offense will be good enough that you'll trigger heavy blade, and since you're attacking twice, and if you're going to be attacking someone that can retaliate, they'll probably attack back at least once, probably twice, and you'll be able to proc Gale Force pretty easily. So the other high offense flyer I want to talk about is Alencia. Alencia is a flyer with good offensive stats and access to a better version of her brave weapon, so she's naturally a great option for heavy blade, especially since she comes with Death Blow. Pretty much everything I mentioned about Churchy you could apply to Alencia, but fortunately for her, she has the speed that she'll be able to quad some things. So if you're attacking someone that's a little tankier and you want to run something like Moonbow, you'll be able to hit them 4 times and proc Moonbow twice if your attack is high enough, and hopefully carve them down. Now if you have like a minus speed Alencia or a plus attack one or whatever, and you don't want to try to quad anyone, you know, you don't necessarily need to run something to boost her speed up. You can probably kill things in 2 hits with Moonbow or Glimmer, honestly, if it's, you know, a favorable matchup. Or you could do the Gale Force build. With the Gale Force build with Death Blow, your attack's going to be high enough that you'll pretty much always proc her special and get to move again. And of course, drag back will help her get to safety. So the next subset of units I'm going to talk about are, quote, sweepers. They're units that either come with fire sweep weapons or make effective use of them, typically. That can honestly apply to the flyers I was talking about. I know fire sweep Cordelia is a pretty typical build, same for like Tana. But units such as Soleil that come with fire sweep sword, with her ludicrous attack as well, could definitely take advantage of heavy blade. If you're lucky enough to pull the plus attack Soleil, you can just stick with her native darting blow to help her double things, because really for heavy blade to have the effect you want it to, you're going to want to double things, and her attack is high enough that it doesn't really need any help to proc heavy blade. And you could run a 2 cooldown special so that it'll be ready for the second attack, or if you want to, you could run a 4 cooldown special. But for a fire sweep weapon, having it ready on enemy phase obviously isn't going to help you at all, so I don't really know how advantageous that would be. But of course, giving her drag back would help her get back to safety a little easier. And threat and attack will help her survive a little better. But of course, if you want to give her a little more attack, make sure she's hitting a little harder and definitely proc it, you could always give her to a Sparrow, if you've got a unit that has it just laying around. And of course, you also have the most common fire sweep bow user, and that would be, well, one of the 2. But Bridal Cordelia, of course, can do it pretty well. And if you have a plus attack Bridal Cordelia, and you run her with life and death, as most people do, then she's going to hit a hefty 54, and that'll definitely be enough in most cases. So she's going to proc heavy blade. And you can run a 2 cooldown special to help her have it ready for that second attack, so she can be sure that she's going to eliminate whatever she hits. But if you're running with a dancer, and you're able to make a favorable matchup with the first unit and eliminate them without needing a special, you could run a higher cooldown special, and then have it ready for the next fight, get danced, and then take out a second unit. And the next, I guess, subset of units I'm going to talk about are just units with unique weapons. One of those being Ephraim. He was lucky enough to have gotten a unique, refined weapon. So the fact that he has an immediate follow-up means that he'll be able to charge specials pretty easily. So in most cases, Ephraim will probably be dueling other melee characters because his defense is pretty high and he can do it. So he can effectively run a 3 cooldown special, have it ready on his second attack. But if you do plan to use him to take out ranged enemies, then a 2 cooldown special will make sure he does the job. And of course, since his upgrade has made him more of a player phase unit, Death Blow is the more optimal option, but Attack plus 3 will probably help you as well to take out most enemies. And Renewal just helps him stay stacked up on full health so he can keep using that extra follow-up attack. The other unit I want to talk about real briefly is Celica, and of course Ragnarok gives her the offensive boost she needs to really utilize Heavy Blade. So with Celica, if her health is full, she'll get a nice 5 attack bonus, and in most cases that'll be enough to allow her to proc Heavy Blade. Even if you just have Life and Death 2, she's going to hit 58 attack, and that'll probably do it. And her speed is going to typically be high enough that she'll get a follow-up. And if Celica is going to be dueling other mages, and a 3 cooldown special like Luna will help her take them out. But if she's fighting a melee unit, then she'll charge Luna without using it and she'll have it ready for the next engagement. And of course, Desperation is just a good choice because if she takes a little bit of damage on top of the damage she's going to take from Ragnarok, she'll be able to retaliate without getting hit, which is good because she's very squishy. Okay, so in the next tier, I've got, starting off, I'm going to talk about the high attack, low speed armor units that typically run Brave weapons. So the 2 premier units of that group would be Effie, is the one who's always done that, and Winter Crom now. So Winter Crom basically has a very similar stat line to Effie. So this set works really well for the likes of Crom and Effie because their speed is so low. They definitely want to keep Wary Fighter, and they don't want to use Bold Fighter, because even though it guarantees a follow-up attack, it doesn't help them survive because they're always going to get doubled. So it'll help them get the extra charges they need. So if you're using your Wary Fighter armor to bait an attack, which typically they have to do, they have a hard time engaging because of their low movement. Even with Armor March, it's kind of tough. They'll get 1 charge because they'll just get hit once. And then they'll be able to move forward and hit that unit, hopefully eliminate it. And if you're running Gale Force, you'll then be able to move again. So this is kind of a goofy build. If you don't want to do this, you could always run Aether. Or you could always just go with the Moonbow build. There's nothing wrong with that, because that way, you know, either way, when you engage, you're guaranteed a Moonbow proc, or Glimmer for that matter. If their attacks are so high, they can make good use of it too if they're not in an unfavorable matchup. And of course, Threaten Attack is good for helping their survivability, as well as making sure they proc Heavy Blade. So I have Nino listed here on the chart, and I'm just going to talk about her, but in general, I'm going to be talking about Blade Tomes as well. But Nino is just the premier Blade Tome, so I'm just going to use her as an example. So the nice thing about the Heavy Blade Seal is it will take into effect bonuses to attack that Blade Tomes get. So if you're running like an Erica with your Nino, then those extra, you know, either 16 or 14 points she's getting into her attack will factor in. So if you have a plus attack Nino, and you know her attack is effectively boosted to 72, I think, is what it would be with full boosts, then she will have 0 problem proccing Heavy Blade. And Nino tends to be fast enough that she's going to double most people that she fights with. But even if she doesn't, her attack's high enough that she'll be able to eliminate a lot of things. And typically Nino has Fury just because she wants the help with her attack and speed. You could always run Life and Death as well. And actually with this build I intended to put Arden Sacrifice on her because even though she can tank pretty reliably, another good option for her to get in Desperation range is to use Arden Sacrifice. But another interesting build I thought of, which is a little more budget, not a whole lot, is to put Escape Route on her, because that way if you're dueling a mage, she'll take a hit and hit back, so she'll proc Luna on her second attack, and then after that she'll probably be in pretty rough shape. So if you're not using a dancer, so long as there's no other enemies in range, she can easily get to safety. So the last subset I'm going to talk about in this tier are the high offense Cavaliers. And the nice thing for Cavaliers is even though their total stats are a little lower, they have access to cavalry buffs. With the ones that have naturally high attack, especially those who can easily get attack boosts, can do really well with Heavy Blade. Particularly, starting with the first one I have listed here, Siegbert, because on player phase he can get ludicrous amounts of attack. So if you're lucky to get a plus attack Siegbert and you have a Swiss Sparrow laying around, then he's going to get an extra 8 attack and 8 speed on initiation, so he'll hit 61 attack and 43 speed, which will be enough to double most units, and definitely enough to proc Heavy Blade in most cases. And his attack will be high enough that he'll definitely benefit from 3 cooldown attack boosting special, so he'll always proc it on his second attack and eliminate whatever he's fighting. But of course, if you have a plus speed Siegbert, then you probably just want to stick with his native death blow. And of course, Frederick is a pretty good contender for a Brave Axe build, and he'll work pretty much just the exact same as Cherchi. So going down to the next tier, I want to talk briefly about another group of units that I think would be good with it, and those are the high attack mages that are also high resistance. Units that are capable of being used as enemy phase units. Sanaki being kind of the odd one out, because she does have ludicrously high attack and high resistance, but she's not really able to double anything unless she has a skill to help her do so. So I kind of have her as the, the main enemy phase unit here. So she's actually pretty easy to build to take advantage of Heavy Blade, especially if you have a plus attack Sanaki. You could just put Fury on her and give her quick riposte, and so long as she can survive 2 attacks from whatever's attacking her, as long as it's not like a physical unit or a blue mage, she'll probably be okay. Then she'll be able to retaliate with Glacies. But honestly, her attack is high enough that if you don't need the special during her first fight, you could always just put Aether on her and have it ready for the next fight. And of course, if you have some more resources to spend, I talked about Blade Tomes earlier, you could always give her a Blade Tome. And you could give her attack ploys to make absolutely sure that whoever's attacking her has lower attack, and she'll definitely proc Heavy Blade. And then I want to talk briefly about Katarina. I think in theory Katarina is kind of slept on as a good, resistance magic bait unit, enemy phase unit. Because even with her native tome, she can be pretty strong. You can refine it for attack, which I know is kind of not optimal, but it'll raise her attack up to 50, especially if she's plus attack. And you can put 3 of your ally units around her, and that'll boost her up to 56 if you give her Fury, which in most cases should be enough to proc Heavy Blade. And honestly, by that point, she'd have 43 speed as well, which would make quick riposte kind of not necessary, so you could always give her a breaker skill or advantage or something like that instead, or desperation if you want to have her ready to counterattack in the next phase. But with this, her speed will be high enough that she'll likely not get doubled, which means she won't be proccing Glacies during that turn. So you could always run Iceberg if you think she's going to need it on her, or if you want to make sure she's eliminating whoever's attacking her. But you could run a higher cooldown, such as Glacies or Aether, if you want to have her have it ready for the next fight. And same as Sanaki, you could always just give her a Blade Tome. And if you're feeling extra generous and you really just want to spike up her attack stat in enemy phase, you could give her Fierce Stance. So if she's attacked and she's got 3 allies around her, she'll hit 60 attack, and that's pretty nasty. And I have Luton here because she can run pretty much the same style of builds. I just think high resistance units with ploy skills are great for baiting other mages, and Luton's attack is pretty high, so she could definitely make good use of it too. So the next group of units I'm going to talk about quickly is what I refer to as the high attack enemy phase units. So these units are kind of like Sanaki. They're really slow and they have high attack, but they don't have like the high resistance like she does, so their job's a little different. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Dorcas. He pretty much comes with the set you need, with everything except for infantry pulse. That's not really going to help him to secure Heavy Blade procs. I would put threat and attack on him and just plant him next to an enemy. Dorcas is one of those units, he has like no reason to attack any other enemy. You would rather just sit him next to someone and let them go to work on him. So with his native Fierce Stance, if you have a plus attack Dorcas, it's going to give him 60 attack, and that'll probably proc Heavy Blade. And so long as he can survive 2 attacks, which with his high defense he probably can, he'll have Aether ready for the next combat, or you could always give him Ignis to be sure that he's going to eliminate whatever he's fighting. And another good unit, I believe, would be Adult Tiki, because her base attack is actually pretty high, and if you give her Lightning Breath Plus, which she comes with, and refine it, again, I know attack refinement is less than optimal, but it works well in this case. But a nice budget build would be just to put attack plus 3 on her, which would put her at 55, which in most cases would probably be high enough. And you could just give her quick riposte, and with that, you'll either be able to put Bonfire on her to be sure that on her second attack she'll proc it, even with, you know, the Lightning Breath penalty. Or you could give her Aether, which she won't proc during the first fight she's in, but it'll be ready for the second one. Of course, it's not as optimal as a Steady Breath build for dragons with Lightning Breath Plus, but, you know, not everyone has that to throw around. And if you've got some more resources to spend, if you have an extra Dorcas, you could always give her Fierce Stance instead of attack plus 3, which will make her hit 58 instead of 55. So I also made a spot specifically for Arden here. The unfortunate thing for Arden is that his attack is a little lower than Effie and Crom, about 4 points, and he doesn't have access to IVs like they do, so his attack may or may not be high enough with the Brave Sword build to proc Heavy Blade. He's only going to hit 50 on initiation, and typically with Armor Emblem, you're not going to be running Gold Armor all that often unless you have a Hector in your team. But even then, he has 54, which it's going to be hit or miss whether you're able to proc Heavy Blade. Luckily, if you are, the Follow Bring means he's going to be hitting 4 times, which means you could either run Glimmer Moonbow, which means he's going to be proccing it twice no matter what, or you could run Aether, which means he'll proc it on the 3rd hit, or Ignis, same thing, and pretty much a guarantee chance that he'll eliminate whatever he's fighting. But another build you could try if you want to send his attack through the roof is to give him either a Silver Sword or Slaying Edge plus and refine it for attack, and then give him Fire Boost, because with the refinement his health is going to hit 65, which means in most cases he will have Fire Boost up and ready. And with his follow-up ring, he'll definitely, well, with his follow-up ring ready, he'll have a follow-up attack no matter what, which means he can run Bonfire to pretty strong effect. And if you're running a Slaying Edge, you can run Ignis. And on his second attack, he'll always have it charged and ready, so he'll eliminate whatever he's fighting. And the last group of units is basically just individual units I thought of that might benefit from it a little bit. So I'm just going to talk briefly about them as well. First off, good old Alphonse. Anything to help him be a little stronger, I suppose. If you want to keep his native death blow and make him a player phase unit, I would put Vantage on him, because he's probably not going to kill whatever he's fighting, but that way you could run a 4 cooldown special, because he'll attack and get 2 charges and then get attacked back twice, so he'll get up to 4 charges. And then if you run Threat and Defense on him and Vantage, then he has a good chance of hopefully killing whatever he was fighting to begin with in the first place before they actually are able to hit him and kill him, so long as he can survive those 2 attacks initially. And with his natively high attack, especially if you have a plus attack variant, Hector would be great with it. Since he has built-in quick riposte, that just makes his enemy phase even more scary. It allows you to run something like Ignis, so it'll be charged and ready on his follow-up, which means he'll eliminate everything that's fighting him, more or less. But you could always run Aether, because there's a good chance he can eliminate what he's fighting anyway, and if you put Vantage on him, then that just means, just like with the Alphonse, he'll hopefully be in Vantage range and be able to either hit and kill whatever is initiating onto him, or hit them and hopefully heal up enough that he'll be okay. So I'm just going to call him Self's dad. He would also make good use of it, just because his attack is already pretty high, and if you pull plus attack one, then his attack is super high, especially with horse buffs. If you have home cavalry on him and he's plus attack, he's going to hit 63, which is crazy, honestly. Especially if you put Fury on him as well, which he kind of wants because his speed is kind of in the middle, but with Fury and Hone buffs, he'll hit 41, which means in most cases he'll be able to double most units, as long as they're not also speed buffed. So you could either run Bonfire or Draconic Aura and have it ready on the second attack, or run Aether and have it ready for the next battle. And I didn't actually build any of these, but I'll just talk about them briefly. Last are just some high offense mages they're just your typical mages with good offensive spreads. The only reason I have them down here is because they don't natively come with blade tomes. If you give them a blade tome, they'll go right up to tier 2 with Nino. But just as they are, they're not quite as strong because while their offense is good, without the extra bonus from the blade tome, it's not a guarantee they'll proc it. But they all have enough speed that they'll typically get follow-up attacks, you know, and they'll hopefully have a charged special awaiting for that second attack. So, I know that was a little long-winded. I talked about a lot of units, but I hope you enjoyed my ramblings. And if you have thought up some better builds for units, or if you thought of some units that I didn't think of that you think would be great for the Heavy Blade Seal, go ahead and talk about it in the comments. You know, leave some pictures of some builds, or, you know, list some things that you think I might have missed. And also, while you're down there commenting, let me know what kind of luck you're having on this on the Legendary Heroes banner that came out today. I wouldn't say I had bad luck, but I didn't get the unit I wanted, so I'm a little bitter about that. So I hope you all had better luck than me. So anyway, thank you all for watching, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.